Now the footage, a compilation of footage from the Easter Sunday attacks on the 21st of April 2019 were just brought to you. We are going back to these horrific attacks, the Easter massacre as we call it, in 2019, because a lot of allegations are circulating, not just on social media, in mainstream platforms. We're talking about and still questioning who carried out the attacks, who's responsible for these attacks, whether there is a team behind the extremists and the terrorists that we've been talking about for the past 2 years. And with all that footage that were never seen before have been uncovered, I'd like to take you to a compilation of excerpts from that footage of Zahran Hashim, the very known extremist who is known to have carried out these attacks, the ringleader of the attacks, his farewell message prior to carrying out the Easter attacks. We can take a look at those excerpts now.
இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது இரத்த துளிகள் எங்களது சிதறிய மண்டை ஓடுகளால் எங்களது சதைப்பிண்டங்களால் இங்கு ஒரு விலாயத் கட்டப்படும். ஹலீஃபா அபூபக்கர் அல் பக்தாதி ஹஃபிதுல்லாஹுடைய தேசத்திற்கு பையத் செய்கின்ற மக்கள் கூட்டம் கூட்டமாக உருவாகுவார்கள். இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது முயற்சி வீணாகாது. அல்லாஹ்விற்காகவே நாங்கள் செல்கிறோம், அல்லாஹ்வுடைய தீனுக்காக. எங்களது இந்த தாக்குதலில் கிறிஸ்தவ தேவாலயங்கள் இருக்கிறது. எதற்காக கிறிஸ்தவ தேவாலயங்களை தெரிவு செய்தோம் தெரியுமா? நியூசிலாந்தில் எங்களது மக்கள் தொழுது கொண்டிருக்கின்ற அல்லாஹ்வை வணங்குவதற்காக சென்ற அந்த மக்களை வகை தொகையின்றி கொன்றொழித்தீர்கள். அதற்கு பழிக்கு பழியாக அல்லாஹ்வுடைய ஆலயத்தில் கை வைத்த உங்களுக்கு பாடம் புகட்டுவதற்காக கிறிஸ்தவ தேவாலயங்களை வெடிக்க வைக்க வருகிறோம். இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது முயற்சி வீணாகாது. அல்லாஹ்விற்காகவே நாங்கள் செல்கிறோம், அல்லாஹ்வுடைய தீனுக்காக செல்கிறோம். காஃபிர்களே, உங்களை நோக்கி வெடிக்க வைக்க நாங்கள் கொண்டு வருகின்ற மருந்து இருக்கிறது, அது எங்கள் கரத்தால் செய்தது தான். ஒரு காஃபிருடைய பணம் அதில் இல்லை, ஹராமான காசு அதில் இல்லை. எந்த காஃபிரும் எங்களுக்கு உதவவில்லை. காஃபிர் எப்படி எங்களுக்கு முஜாஹிதீன்களாய் எங்களுக்கு காஃபிர் எப்படி உதவி செய்வான்? நாங்களே மருந்தை செய்து உங்களை நோக்கி கொண்டு வருகிறோம்.
Now this footage, I believe, answer questions that have been dividing our nation. Unseen footage exclusively now available at Hyde Park on Ada Derana 24. Zahran Hashim explaining in his farewell message the motivation and ideology which made the team, including himself, carry out these attacks. I've invited to our studios Director General of the Institute of National Security Studies, Professor Rohan Gunaratna. A very warm welcome back to studios.
Thank you, Indeewari.
I believe this was an opportune time to invite you back at Hyde Park. We've discussed about the attacks, questioned you about the motivation of Zahran Hashim's and his team members to carry out these attacks, these horrific attacks that have to date left the country in disbelief and also divided as a nation on trying to figure out answers to why, who carried out, what led them to carry out these attacks. You did give us back then in 2019 an understanding of this movement that was spreading across Asia, the movement of ISIS in Sri Lanka and our parts of the region. But why did Zahran carry out this attack? What led to this attack, in your understanding?
Zahran Hashim is a religious fanatic. He was influenced by the ideology of the Islamic State. Zahran Hashim clearly states that he was representing the Islamic State, the threat group that had declared a caliphate in 2014, and he also refers to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was the caliph, the so-called caliph of the Islamic State. So the attack was carried out at the behest of that organization, and that is why Zahran Hashim chose to attack the churches. He chose to attack hotels with Western tourists. This video, the farewell video of Zahran Hashim, filmed on the eve of the Easter Sunday attack, explicitly explains his motivation, which is religious extremism, and also how and why the modus operandi, the method of operation of this attack. And it is consistent with the attacks we have seen globally by the Islamic movements, meaning the radical Muslim organizations.
Now this clip says, we're doing this for Allah. If I may just have our producers replay that tiny excerpt from the piece.
இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது இரத்த துளிகள் எங்களது சிதறிய மண்டை ஓடுகளால் எங்களது சதைப்பிண்டங்களால் இங்கு ஒரு விலாயத் கட்டப்படும். ஹலீஃபா அபூபக்கர் அல் பக்தாதி ஹஃபிதுல்லாஹுடைய தேசத்திற்கு பையத் செய்கின்ற மக்கள் கூட்டம் கூட்டமாக உருவாகுவார்கள். இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது முயற்சி வீணாகாது. அல்லாஹ்விற்காகவே நாங்கள் செல்கிறோம். அல்லாஹ்வுடைய தீனுக்காக.
What does this mean? Does this mean all Muslims believe that this should happen?
Muslims do not believe that non-Muslims or unbelievers should be attacked. But Zahran Hashim believes it. So in Sri Lanka, we have a very tiny percentage of Muslims who were exposed to the radical and the violent ideologies from the Middle East. The Muslims in Sri Lanka has lived in peace and harmony for 1,400 years because they practice traditional local Islam, a beautiful form of Islam that emerged with Buddhism, Hinduism, Christianity. But since Sri Lanka became an open economy in 1977, and especially after the tsunami of 2004, we saw from the Gulf countries a very virulent form of Islam came here, and a core teaching of that Islam is al-wala wal-bara, that is loyalty to Muslims and hatred to non-Muslims. Zahran believes in that ideology. But I want to tell you that most Muslims in this country are peaceful Muslims, and it's a very small percentage that believes in it. And that is why government and the Muslim partners, ACJU, DMRCA and other Waqf board, other organizations should ensure that Muslims are protected from these extreme ideologies. Otherwise we will become like a country in Asia, Africa and the Middle East where there are frequent terrorist attacks.
So is this where he's talking about unbelievers? I'd like that replayed.
சகோதரர்களே, முஜாஹிதீன்களே, உங்களுக்கு ஒரு செய்தியை சொல்கிறோம். உறுதியோடு இருங்கள். காவிர்களை விட்டு விடாதீர்கள். காவிர்களை பற்றி அல்லாஹ் சொல்வதை மறந்து விடாதீர்கள். எங்கள் மக்களை கொன்று குவித்துவிட்டு இங்கு சுற்றுலா வருகின்ற காவிர்களை விட்டு விடாதீர்கள். இலங்கையில் உள்ள காபிர்கள் இவர்கள் லேசுப்பட்டவர்கள் அல்ல. இவர்கள் அல்லாஹ்வையே ஏசியவர்கள். லஃப்துல் ஜலாலா, கண்ணியமிக்க அல்லாஹ்வுடைய வார்த்தையை பன்றியில் எழுதி ஆர்ப்பாட்டம் செய்தவர்கள். அல்லாஹ்வுடைய மர்மஸ்தானம், அல்லாஹ்வுக்கு மர்மஸ்தானம் இருக்கிறது என்று கேவலமாக பேசியவர்கள். எங்களது நபியை தரக்குறைவாக விமர்சித்தவர்கள், குர்ஆனை எரித்தவர்கள், பள்ளியை உடைத்தவர்கள், அல்லாஹ்வுக்கு இணை கற்பித்து வாழுகின்றவர்கள். இவர்களை குர்ஆனில் அல்லாஹ் சொல்வது போன்று ஃபக்துலுல் முஷ்ரிகீன ஹைது வஜத்துமுஹும், முஷ்ரிக்குகளை கண்ட இடத்தில் நீங்கள் கொல்லுங்கள் என்று அல்லாஹ் சொல்கிறான். முஷ்ரிக்குகளை கண்ட இடத்தில் கொல்லுங்கள். காஃபிர்களே, உங்களுக்கும் எங்களுக்கும் மத்தியில் வலைஸ பைனனா வ பைனல் குஃபார் இல்ல சைஃபுல் பத்தார், தெரிந்து கொள்ளுங்கள். உங்களுக்கு எங்களுக்கு மத்தியில் வாழ்த்தான் பேசுமே தவிர உங்களுடன் எந்த சமரச பேச்சும் எங்களுக்கு கிடையாது. இஸ்லாமிய மார்க்கத்தில் அப்பாவி பொதுமகன், இராணுவம் என்ற ஒரு வேறுபாடு கிடையாது. மனிதர்களை இஸ்லாம் காஃபிர் முஸ்லிம் என்று தான் பிரிக்கிறது. காஃபிராக இருந்தால் அவனுடைய இரத்தம் ஹலால். அவன் ஜிஸியாவை செலுத்தி ஒப்பந்தம் செய்து கொண்டால் அவனுடைய இரத்தத்தை நாங்கள் ஓட்ட மாட்டோம். இஸ்லாம் ஈமான் அமான் இரண்டும் இல்லாவிட்டால், இறை நம்பிக்கையும் முஸ்லிம்களுடன் ஒப்பந்தமும் இல்லாவிட்டால் உங்களது இரத்தம் எங்களுக்கு ஹலால், அதை ஓட்டுவோம், உங்களது பொருளாதாரத்தை கனிமத்தாக பறிப்போம். முஸ்லிம்களே, நீங்கள் காபிர்களுடன் சமரசம் செய்து வாழ்வதை விட்டுவிடுங்கள். திருமறை குர்ஆனில் அல்லாஹ் சொல்கிறான், வலா யஸாலூன யுகாத்திலூனக்கும் ஹத்தா யருத்தூக்கும் அன் தீனிக்கும் இன் இஸ்ததாஉ, அவர்களால் முடியும் என்றால் உங்களை மதம் மாற்றும் வரையும் உங்களுடன் போர் செய்து கொண்டே இருப்பார்கள்.
who are these unbelievers? What are they talking about here?
Zahran Hashim refers to as believers, fellow Muslims, as unbelievers, Christians.
But let me interrupt, sir. When you say fellow Muslims as believers, we're referring to all Muslims who you say are not part of this entire ideology.
Yes, Zahran started to radicalize the Muslim community, but Zahran was stopped at some point, and Zahran at that point went underground. He fought with the Sufis in Katankudi in 2017 March. Then in 2017 March he became a wanted man. Then he couldn't openly preach. Then he became a hunted man. Then he went underground and he started to organize a series of attacks. Now, when Zahran says unbelievers, he means people who do not believe in Islam. And that category becomes his principal target. If you look at the attacks Zahran staged, even before Easter attack, because he attacked the Mother Mary statue, the Ganesh statue, the Buddha images in the central hills of our country in December of 2018. So you can see his ideology starting to manifest. Of course, the most significant terrorist attack he mounted was the Easter attack, where he specifically targeted the hotels to kill Westerners and the churches to kill Christians and Catholics.
But why specifically these churches and hotels in Zahran's and these attackers' views? Why did they target these attacks in such a way? Hotels to churches and one of the most important days of the Catholic faith.
Zahran very clearly explains that his motivation to attack the hotels is because Westerners were in those hotels. They came here on holiday. And he says that Westerners were mounting attacks against Muslims in Iraq and Syria. There was a coalition, European, American, Australian coalition that was operating in Iraq and Syria, trying to stabilize those countries because a terrorist group called the Islamic State and previously Al-Qaeda was dominating. So what we are seeing is, Zahran says, it is in revenge for those Western troops, Western forces, Western governments that he mounted the attacks against Westerners in these hotels. So his primary target in hotels was Western tourists. When it comes to churches, he clearly says, I attacked the churches because of what happened in New Zealand. In New Zealand, an Australian went and attacked, he was a right-wing terrorist, he went and attacked 2 mosques, and Zahran says it is in retaliation to that attack in New Zealand that he's mounting Easter Sunday attack.
We will try to share with you excerpts of footage that we've received exclusively of Zahran's so-called farewell message prior to the Easter attacks. But at the same time, before I talk about the hotels and about the churches, why they were attacked, I want to ask you the significance of this video. Why are we releasing it now? How do you get hold of these footage? Where does it come from, and why are we sharing it now? How did we not have this 2 years ago?
This is a 2.5-hour video. The video was filmed in Templars Road in an apartment that was rented by Zahran Hashim's group. And this video was eventually transported to the Eastern Province, and it was found in the hard drive of Zahran's 2 brothers who succeeded Zahran. In fact, they were planning to mount a second wave of attacks, and this video would have been a huge inspiration for the new recruits and attackers. So this video, it was recovered at that time, and it was sent to the government analyst department for authentication. They have authenticated it. Not only that, this video has been presented to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry into the Easter Sunday attack. It has also been presented to the Attorney General's department.
I believe there are many answers to questions that have been raised in society by certain heads of organizations, activists, and this video should have been released so that we answer all these questions, unanswered questions among communities of the nation. But at the same time, Professor, a big question we try to seek answers for is where Zahran got his money from. Whether someone from the government funded it then, someone from the opposition funded it, or whether there was an organization, overseas organization, whether India had a part to play in this. Where did these funds come to Zahran, who says he did all this for the sake of Allah and martyrdom?
Zahran, in his video, very clearly explains that this money is from believers. He says the money is halal, meaning that he did not get any money from non-Muslims, or he didn't get this money from any government. So I want to share with you very clearly that the source of finance for Zahran Hashim is from the two sons of Ibrahim Hajiar. Ibrahim Hajiar was the richest spice trader in Sri Lanka. He had two sons. One is Ilham, other is Insaf. Ilham mounted the attack with Zahran Hashim in Shangri-La. Insaf mounted the attack in Cinnamon Grand. And I also want to tell you that Ilham radicalized his wife, Fatima Jeffrey, who was pregnant, who was also with her 3 children. And when the police came to Mahavir Gardens, she detonated. She had a Decathlon backpack, another 1.5 liter bottle with explosives. So you can see that not only Ilham, but Ilham's brother was radicalized, Ilham's wife was radicalized. The radicalization has spread beyond these 3 people, and those are matters of investigation. So I want to share with you that the funding came from Copper Colossus, a company that was run by Ibrahim Hajiar's children. And the investigation into the terrorist financing by the Sri Lankan investigative agencies, as well as by foreign investigators, because Easter Sunday attack is a multinational investigation where we have the Australian Federal Police, we had the Federal Bureau of Investigations also working on this case. All their investigations very clearly shows that Zahran Hashim received this funding from the Ibrahim Hajiar's children. There's no government funding, and there's no foreign government funding this attack.
Let me go back to this excerpt where he talks about how the funds came in. I'm told that our producers are able to cut that tiny excerpt for us.
இன்ஷா அல்லாஹ் எங்களது முயற்சி வீணாகாது. அல்லாஹ்விற்காகவே நாங்கள் செல்கிறோம், அல்லாஹ்வுடைய தீனுக்காக செல்கிறோம். காஃபிர்களே, உங்களை நோக்கி வெடிக்க வைக்க நாங்கள் கொண்டு வருகின்ற மருந்து இருக்கிறது, அது எங்கள் கரத்தால் செய்ததுதான். ஒரு காஃபிருடைய பணம் அதில் இல்லை, ஹராமான காசு அதில் இல்லை. எந்த காஃபிரும் எங்களுக்கு உதவவில்லை. காஃபிர் எப்படி எங்களுக்கு முஜாஹிதீன்களாய் எங்களுக்கு காஃபிர் எப்படி உதவி செய்வான்? நாங்களே மருந்தை செய்து உங்களை நோக்கி கொண்டு வருகிறோம்.
He says this is haram, the funds. And this also leaves a question whether Muslims are involved, and we have to clarify that, I think, before we move on in this conversation, that no Muslims, we have a great vibrant community of Muslims and people of the Islamic faith who coexist with the Sinhalese to Burghers, to Tamils. I think you very well explained this during our previous programs too. But if you can further explain how Zahran and his team are trying to bring the entire Islamic faith here together.
Zahran believed that he should not take any money from non-Muslims, and that is called haram, not permitted. So he only took money from fellow Muslims, that is halal. Now in Sri Lanka, most Muslims did not support Zahran Hashim's ideology. Zahran Hashim's ideology initially was Salafi Wahhabism. Those groups are called Tawhid groups. So that is why the Sri Lankan government has proscribed those groups. And these Salafi Wahhabi groups, they unfortunately replaced the local and traditional Islam, which is a very beautiful form of Islam, where there was no separation between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. But with this ideology coming, a tiny segment of Muslims started to look different and think different and appear different. They had their own dress code, they had their own food, they had their own schools, and they had their own practices. For example, if you look at Insaf and Ilham, they don't want to vaccinate their children, right? Fatima Jifri wanted the children to study at home, didn't want to send them to school, right? So the radicalization was very, very deep. They don't want to have anything to do with non-Muslims. In fact, Fatima Jifri told both her parents and told Ilham's parents, that is the Shangri-La suicide bomber's parents, that they should give charity to non-Muslims. But in Islam, it is one of the great religions where zakat, sadaqah, charity is a part and parcel of that religion. So this cascading ideology that came to Sri Lanka from the Gulf countries in many ways disrupted the excellent friendship that existed between the Muslims and the non-Muslims. That is why we are very keen that the Sri Lankan Muslim community play the first role, the premier role in de-radicalizing and rehabilitating those who have drifted towards Salafi Wahhabism. And we want to ensure that traditional and local Islam is once again re-emerged and it becomes the dominant form of Islam. Because if you have a form of Islam that is intolerant against other religions, that is intolerant against the images, the Buddhist Ganesh, Mother Mary, these statues. In Sri Lanka, in every street you find a Buddha image or a Christian image or a Hindu image. So these ideologies should be very tightly controlled. That is why we need a rehabilitation program, a very effective one, and we need the religious space regulated so that extremist ideologies do not come and take root. If that happens, it is inevitable that the staircase of radicalization, exclusivism, that is you get separated from other communities, leads to extremism, and when extremism heightens, it becomes terrorism.
What is the point of contention between Zahran's Tawheed organization and local authorities such as the All Ceylon Jamiatul Ulema and groups representing the Muslim community here?
All Ceylon Jamiatul Ulema is a body of Muslim religious clerics that has the mandate to regulate the religious space together with DMRCA, the Department of Muslim and Religious Cultural Affairs, and also the Waqf Board. So these three institutions are meant to promote moderation, toleration and coexistence among the Muslims. Now Zahran's organization, National Tawheed Jamaat, promoted Salafi Wahhabism. Ceylon Tawheed Jamaat promoted Wahhabism. All Ceylon Tawheed Jamaat promoted Wahhabism. United Tawheed Jamaat promoted Wahhabism. So these Wahhabi organizations, we have banned them because this country is a country where all religious groups live. We can't afford to have an ideology where there is a call for attacks against non-Muslims. So our vision and our mission is to promote local and traditional Islam so that everyone can live in peace and harmony in this country.
Was there a second attack planned? For example, we heard of an attack on the temple of the sacred tooth relic, the Dalada Maligawa. Was there such a plan?
When Zahran Hashim executed the Easter Sunday attack, his two brothers, Zaini, who is a Muslim religious cleric, a Maulavi, and Rilwan, who was the military wing leader, who was explosives expert, they moved to the eastern province. And they eventually, in the eastern province, they were moving in 2 or 3 different places, and their final place was Saindamardu. And in Saindamardu, due to intelligence operation, police and military was able to locate their safe house, and at that time there was a mass suicide. And in that mass suicide, everyone was killed. They all detonated because they also believed in the same ideology as Zahran Hashim. And it was that team that was planning to mount an attack against the Dalada Maligawa has a procession, the Kandi Perahara. They were planning to mount an attack against that and other targets. They had already mounted surveillance on other targets, and they were preparing for that attack. They had sufficient explosives and sufficient number of suicide bombers to mount a second attack. But fortunately, the military and the law enforcement agencies working with intelligence was able to detect and disrupt and dismantle that cell in the eastern province.
I'd like to take your attention back to the motive of the attack and how these attacks were carried out, the infrastructure, the logistics of it. In Parliament, one of our members of Parliament said that Hadia had referred or mentioned that Zahran had contacted the intelligence prior to attacks here in Sri Lanka. I have a few questions there. Does this mean that the intelligence failed? If so, or was this a failure of the government to act upon information or intelligence shared with the then government? And what is the impact of these statements? Because we're talking about intelligence or a failure. Yes, we spoke about a failure to act upon intelligence, but what is the impact of such statements on the overall efforts to rehabilitate and reintegrate extremists into the society?
Hadia is the widow of Zahran Hashim, and Hadia is coming from a mainstream Muslim family. She married Zahran. She always ideologically opposed Zahran. She didn't even want to dress like a Salafi Wahhabi. And even when the suicide attack, the mass suicide attack took place in Saindamardu, Hadia walked away with the daughter. So the only person who survived the mass suicide was Hadia and Hadia's child. Everyone else perished in that mass suicide attack. Now, Hadia, I have reviewed all Hadia's statements. I have reviewed Hadia's statements to the Presidential Commission of Inquiry, which is a 300-page statement. I have reviewed the 100-page statement that she gave to the CID. I have also reviewed another statement, which is of 22 pages, that Hadia gave to the police when she was in hospital in Batiklo. I have also reviewed two previous statements that she gave to the CID when she was in Kakunugolla, in her mother's house. In none of these statements, it says that Zahran met with intelligence. So I want to tell you that there are political conspiracy theories that have been propagated, that Hadia said that Zahran met with intelligence. It has no basis at all. It has no basis at all. Not only did I review these statements, I interviewed Hadia for many months. And I can tell you that she has not told me that there was any contact between Zahran and intelligence. In fact, Zahran called intelligence dogs in his video. In his 2.5-hour video, he says intelligence is his enemy. So to say that intelligence officers met Zahran, intelligence officers funded Zahran, this has no, it's not grounded on truth.
But this kind of statements, there should be some basis to it. There should be some grounds upon which such responsible authorities, members of parliament, make such statements at the highest authority in the country. And also, we are talking about the Catholic Church of Sri Lanka expressing disappointment over the government's investigation process. The Archbishop of Colombo, Malcolm Cardinal Ranjit, demanded to know why the government did not hold an independent probe into the Easter Sunday attacks. And also, in recent times, the Cardinal has been talking about the need to go international, and that is the only way we can find the truth. He's talking on behalf of his people. But here you are, Professor, sharing with us about investigations that you have followed, that you have interviewed those involved in the attacks. There seems to be a mismatch on these attacks, the evidence we have footage as these that we're sharing now, and the kind of the Easter Commission report. There is a lot of allegation on how the Easter Commission report failed to uncover or bring out the truth that we are all seeking. How does this happen?
Easter Sunday attack, there were 3 investigations and 3 fact-finding reports. One is the Presidential Commission, headed by Justice Janak. Then we have the Parliamentary Committee report, and we also have a National Security sectorial report also produced by Parliament. All these 3 reports were commissioned by the previous government. But what we are seeing is these reports are comprehensive, but unfortunately the previous government and the current government has not disseminated these reports effectively to the public. So I believe that rather than having these thick reports, it is important to have a good public communications campaign so that these conspiracy theories don't emerge. As long as government is unable effectively to use media and social media to communicate these key findings, there will always be such conspiracy theories. One of the reasons this video is being released is because we thought that let's not wait until the trials are completed, because of these conspiracy theories gathering traction. If these conspiracy theories gather traction, what is going to happen is it's going to severely impact on our rehabilitation program. Meaning, if we are not going to rehabilitate those who are in custody, when they are released, they will go and they will mount attacks, they will infect others with their ideology, and those who are in custody will become a part of the terrorist iconography. They will become heroes. That is why it is so important for government to constantly monitor and rebut the online falsehoods and manipulations that a very small amount of politicians are doing for political reasons. With regard to the Cardinal, I want to share with you, the Cardinal bears the greatest weight of Easter. Cardinal is a good man. He prevented a riot of the scale of July 1983, immediately after Easter attack. He told fellow Catholics and the Christians, if you want to kill Muslims, first attack me. And he said, if you do it, you will not go to heaven. So I believe that the cardinal should have been engaged better. Government should have had every 2 weeks a press conference on the ongoing investigation and kept the community, and there are some things that you can't tell the community, at least they should have kept the cardinal informed. Cardinal is seeking justice, cardinal is seeking truth. The truth is found in the 3 fact-finding reports. In terms of justice, the trials have just started, the trial at bar, and I believe that government should give maximum publicity to those trials other than just court reporting, so that the people will understand what happens. Eventually, Hadia will come to court, Zahran's wife. Eventually, Naufa will come to court, the mastermind, the man who brought the ideology from the Middle East and introduced it to Zahran. Milhan, the head of the military wing, will come. And also, this is a multinational investigation. We have had the Americans, the FBI working with us. We have had the Australian Federal Police working with us. They themselves will come and testify.
But there's so much of disappointment yet. Yes, Professor, you tell us that the cardinal could have been engaged, the community should have been more informed, but this kind of dissatisfaction only leads to more and more issues within society. This society has been battered for years as a result of dissatisfaction. But we are also going to talk about the cardinal who you yourself mentioned here, how he prevented another riot. But again, he's calling for the truth. But when the truth is found, what is delaying us in terms of sharing this truth? You're heading an organization, an authority that can share this truth. I understand you're doing this as part of it. But how can we move forward here?
I believe government should develop a very effective and a very proactive strategic communications capability, not only with regard to terrorism, extremism, but also in other domains. I think one of the greatest weaknesses of the state is that we have not understood the power of communication. Every word is a weapon, and these weapons are being used now to attack government about the investigations, about the findings. And I think anything that is said about Easter Sunday, if it is wrong, it should be rebutted. And that is why I have decided to make this video a public video, so that people will know that the main driver of this attack is religious extremism, and it's nothing done by the state. Not only that, I will share with you a story. I interviewed one of the brothers of a suicide attacker. He told me a very sad story, and that was my decision to release this video. He said that when this attack took place, we were all under the impression that this attack was driven by religious extremism. That is exactly what Zahran said. But after that, I listened to a speech by a politician from the opposition. And then I had some doubts created. Imagine if that doubt is created, whether we will be able to effectively de-radicalize those who are in custody, whether we are able to prevent religious extremism from spreading in this country.
Has there been an impact on the de-radicalization programs carried out so far as a result of the ongoing allegations?
Absolutely. The conspiracy theories are creating a doubt, and we have to rebut, we have to counter the conspiracy theories. We cannot have an ostrich-like approach and allow these stories to spread. And if we do that, what is going to happen is we'll have a very poorly informed country. Those days, these conspiracy theories gathered traction in the Middle East. They said Mossad, CIA did the 9/11 attack, and even some Muslim politicians here said the Easter Sunday attack, the Indians were involved. No, this is an attack by a group of radical Muslims, because we did not guard our religious space. We didn't treasure our religious space. Now we have to do everything possible to prevent these cascading ideologies from Afghanistan, from Iraq, from Syria, from other conflict zones, from coming here and taking root and transforming our Muslim community.
You did mention that the main driver of these attacks is extremism. It's ideology of extremism. I wish I would be able to share more excerpts of that video, but we have time constraints, and we will try to have the video linked to you on our online service on YouTube. But at the same time, I had the opportunity of going through this video, and Zahran Hashim delivers in his statement that him and his team were seeking martyrdom. Him and his team had no materialistic interest. I'd like to take a look at that before I ask you this question.
இந்த துனியாவையும் துனியாவுடைய அலங்காரங்களையும் நாங்கள் தலாக் சொல்லிவிட்டோம். நாங்கள் நஹ்னு அஹ்லுல் குர்ஆன், குர்ஆனுடைய மக்கள், உயிரை கொடுத்து சொர்க்கத்தை வாங்குபவர்கள். இந்த துனியாவுக்காக எங்களுடைய வாழ்க்கை அல்ல. லியஅலாய் கலிமத்தில்லா, அல்லாஹ்வின் வார்த்தை மேலோங்க வேண்டும். தஹ்கீமு ஷர்இல்லா, அல்லாஹ்வுடைய ஷரியா, அல்லாஹ்வுடைய பூமியை ஆள வேண்டும். இதற்காகத்தான் நாங்கள் வந்தோம். கண்ணியமிக்க இஸ்லாமிய சகோதரர்களே, அல்லாஹ்வின் நல்லடியார்களே, வல்ல அல்லாஹு அஸ்ஸவஜல் எங்களுக்கு தௌஹீதின்பால் வழிகாட்டி அந்த தௌஹீதை செயலுருவம் கொடுக்கின்ற வகையில் ஜிஹாத் என்ற உன்னதமான இந்த இபாதத்தின்பால் எங்களை அல்லாஹ் நேர்வழி காட்டினான். ஜிஹாதின் மூலம்தான் நாங்கள் கண்ணியம் பெற்றோம். சிலாஹ் என்று சொல்லக்கூடிய இந்த ஆயுதத்தை சுமந்ததின் மூலம்தான் நாங்கள் உயர்வை அடைந்தோம். இன்றைய தினம் அல்லாஹ்விற்காக அவனுடைய பாதையில் உயிரை கொடுக்கின்ற ஒரு உன்னதமான இபாதத்திற்காக நாங்கள் எல்லாம் ஒன்று திரண்டிருக்கிறோம். அதுதான் அமலியா அல் இஸ்திஷாதியா, வீர மரண தாக்குதல், தற்கொலை தாக்குதல்.
I have a number of questions for you here, Professor. I'm trying to understand what this what they're trying to achieve here. We're talking about mainstream Islam practiced in Sri Lanka and around the world. You did mention the difference between what Zahran Hashim and his team of extremists have practiced, but I'd like you to give us, refresh our minds and memories on what they're really seeking here. When you say martyrdom, jihad, what is this they want? And they also, I did see a subtitle of his Arabic statement where he says, we love our families, but God comes first. But isn't this the God that all Muslims have faith in and worship? Where does this come from in the Islamic preachings?
Zahran is not a mainstream Muslim. He is a deviant Muslim. He has broken away from the mainstream thinking of Islam. And Zahran in this video refers to suicide, istihad. He refers to Amalia, suicide operations. He refers to jihad, holy war. All these are concepts that are being manipulated and misinterpreted by the extremists to advance their political objectives. This is not mainstream Islam. And I want to share with you that Zahran speaks about going to heaven. Zahran's entire team believe that they are going to heaven. He says that if you commit suicide, you will go to paradise, you will have an audience with God, you will be forgiven for sins and vices, you can take 70 relatives with you to heaven, and you will have 72 virgins. But I want to tell you that this is not mainstream Islam, and this is the type of Islam that Al-Qaeda, Islamic State, and their local groups in Sri Lanka that advocated. For example, the NTJ, the National Tawheed Jamaat in Kathankudi. Similarly, the JMIs, the Jamiatul Millati Ibrahim Fi Silani organization. All these ideologies came from overseas and took root in Sri Lanka. So what is key and what is important is that we have to fight ideological extremism. It is too late when a fully fledged suicide bomber is formed and he is going to mount an attack to stop an attack. So the strategy is to prevent. Strategy should be proactive to prevent radicalization. And we can only do this if we work with the Muslim community, if we build a good relationship with the Muslim community, if you mistrust the Muslims, if you distrust the Muslims, if you constantly tell the Muslim, you are a terrorist, you are an extremist, you are a radical, you can't do it. Muslims are like you and me. Most Muslims, it's a very tiny minority that has become like that. Every religious group has produced its share of terrorists. Om Shinrikyo in Japan, Soko Asahara, a Buddhist extremist group, right? RSS had Godsai, who went and killed one of the great leaders of India, Gandhi. Then we had the Kakkane group in Israel, Jewish terrorist group. So many Christian terrorist groups. The terrorist who mounted the attack in New Zealand.
Who's this Sonic we're talking about?
Sonic is a name of an intelligence agent. And Sri Lankan intelligence services, we have two services, two premier services. One is military intelligence, other is the state intelligence service. The state intelligence service and military intelligence produced 350 reports before the Easter attack and informed the political leaders to take action. They didn't, because national security was not a priority during the last government. Sonic is one of those agents who generated that intelligence and information. So the way intelligence services worldwide work, not only Sri Lanka, is that they will create avatars, they will create certain assumed names, and they will communicate with real extremists and terrorists. Sonic communicated with a man called Matale Zahran,
right,
or Podi Zahran. I spoke to that man, he's in custody. And that man was in Qatar, and he was planning to go to Afghanistan with his brother. So I want to share with you that that communication has been misinterpreted and manipulated by certain individuals, and they are trying to harm the Sri Lankan intelligence services. Intelligence services, if they are harmed, we will suffer another attack. So my appeal to our viewers is, remember what happened in Aturgiriya. The commanding officer of the Military Intelligence Corps, Colonel Nizam Mutalif, was killed. Colonel Meedin was killed. A very large number of intelligence operators, informants were killed then. Today, if our intelligence officers are exposed, the same thing will happen. We will not be able to protect this country. So I would say that intelligence, law enforcement, military agencies are the guardians of the state, and we have to protect them. And if there was a neglect of responsibility on their side, I want to tell you that is because of the pressure they received from the political leadership at that time that didn't understand national security or did not give a priority to national security.
I hope this video that we have exclusively released at Hyde Park on Ada Derana answers some of the most unanswered questions of the community. Thank you very much, Professor Rohan Gunaratna, for joining us, for sharing your observations, your research, and your understandings on this very important question.
Thank you very much, Indeewari.
We had with us the Director General of the Institute of National Security Studies of Sri Lanka, Professor Rohan Gunaratna, who himself interviewed those involved in the Easter attacks, not just the Easter attacks, but former de-radicalized members of the IS and some of the extremists who have been propagating this ideology world over. Thank you for watching us at Hyde Park.